Mayor Girtz, how has Athens healed 1 year since the death of Laken Riley?
Well, I'll begin just by noting what a terrible tragedy Laken Riley's murder was. Sadly, we tend to feature about half a dozen murders a year, and they all have ripple effects because those individuals have friends and family members and loved ones, classmates, and of course, anytime tragedy becomes a big news event, it ripples even further because it gets a lot of media coverage. And so people contemplate their own classmates in this case, or as a parent, you think of your own children. And so it was an incident that definitely required a lot of healing. And so for many residents, I don't know that the healing came quickly, and for many, I don't know that it's there still now. If anybody's lost someone close to them, they know that to some degree that loss is forever, and it might resonate with you differently a year or 5 years afterwards, but it's still there.
And you touched on it a little bit, but as a father, you mentioned your 12-year-old before we sat down. As a father, how did that impact you?
When you think about the life of a young person, you think about it unfolding in the decades ahead and the opportunities that they'll have for themselves and the opportunities they'll have to contribute to the community around them. And when a life like Laken Riley's is cut short, you realize that all those contributions aren't going to have the opportunity to be present in the places where they live.
For your small town, being thrust into the national spotlight, being the center of political war back and forth across the aisle, what was your response to that?
I always try and center myself as a policymaker just in an objective understanding of what's happening. And of course, the reality is that people come to Athens for a lot of reasons. People come here as students, and people come here to teach. Some people come here for work. A lot of people come here to be part of the creative and music community. And some people come here seeking refuge. And the vast, vast, vast majority of all of those folks are positive contributors to the Athens community. And I think that's to be embraced. Unfortunately, some individuals in all of those categories have brought some pain and devastation through violence and hurt. And I think that's to be recognized. And so what we try and do is figure out, okay, what are we doing now that works? And what more can we do? And so certainly in this case, I'm primarily concerned with making this as safe a community as possible for everybody who lives here and everybody who comes to visit. The political fireworks, those are certainly going on everywhere these days. And I just accept that that's a feature of this moment in time. But I'm conscious that just as we have to be thoughtful about what will make for a safe community right now, we have to be thinking about the years and the decades ahead too. And so we've focused not only on some police tools and funding, but we've also looked at what can we do in the youth development space, and what can we do in the job creation space, and how can we rebuild under-resourced neighborhoods in town to be places that are safer and healthier to live in. And so all of those are elements of what goes into making a community that you know is going to be healthy for people. And sadly, we recognize that no matter what we do, we've got some more ground to gain always, and the work never stops.
The immigration conversation is so present right now. Following the death of Laken Riley and then the suspect who was ultimately convicted, what would you say to people about where the city of Athens stands there? Because it's such a huge conversation at the time.
Well, as a place of knowledge and learning, we recognize, as I'm sure that your team has discovered, that the immigrant population is no more criminally likely from a violation perspective than any population. In other words, the native-born population is more criminally inclined than the immigrant population. We're obviously having this conversation with the new administration, and this murder happened in the context of a presidential election year. And so I know that lent a lot more heat to this conversation than would have occurred probably in some other time. Athens continues to be a welcoming community because we've benefited from people who've come here from elsewhere. And we've been a more lively community and a more vibrant community because of that. And we make no apologies for that. And so I can't let one tragic incident upend the reality that we're really grateful for those folks who've come here from elsewhere.
And have not committed crimes.
And have not committed crimes.
Mm-hmm. This is also happening in Metro Atlanta. We've seen, ICE raids happen. Have you been in contact with ICE, or is your office working with them in any way about any sweeps coming to Athens?
What those in law enforcement here and elsewhere have indicated to me just in the last couple of weeks is that while it may have been true really in decades past that ICE would at least give a heads up to local law enforcement if they were going to be conducting activities in a locality, that's not happening now. And so we've not gotten any advance notice in these recent weeks.
So it's a pop-up even for you. It would be a pop-up even for your law enforcement.
That's what we've experienced so far, and that's what certainly metro cities have also indicated.
They haven't been here yet, but you're saying the precedent has been set. If they were to come, you wouldn't know.
We've gotten some rumors that they have been present, but again, no official notice.
What safety measures have been put in place in direct response to Laken Riley's death?
What we've done largely is accelerate things that were already in the pipeline. So one of the pieces of apparatus that we've been building out in the criminal justice realm has been a real-time crime center, something of a video wall, so that we could have our multiple camera feeds available in one place so that we could conduct very quick investigations with accurate information. That was something we were working on, but we pushed that forward faster. Because we recognized that having good intelligence was going to mean that if there had been a tragedy or if there had been a crime, we needed to be able to follow up on that and pursue that as quickly as possible. Certainly the specifics of this case were that you had a violent murder happening on a trail. And we've enjoyed our outdoor spaces here, but many of those outdoor spaces aren't accessible by traditional police pursuit vehicles. So we've purchased a set of off-road vehicles so that police can traverse our trail network much more quickly and easily. And so we have several of those vehicles that are able to move up and down our greenways and our rail-to-trail corridors and other outdoor spaces that just aren't as accessible with traditional police vehicles.
You talked earlier about the healing process taking longer for some people, and those people may still be looking for signs of safety. With even the things that have been accelerated, what can people expect to see safety-wise in Athens to let people know this is a safe place to live?
In addition to these new investments, a series of investments in the quality of our police staff have meant that for the first time in 20 years, we have no openings for post-certified police officers now. All those slots are full, and so we have more officers on the street conducting all activities for people's safety. And I would always note that while every murder and every violent incident is a tragedy, we have much lower incidents than comparable cities. So last year in 2024, we had 5 murders, and I'd ask any analysts to look to similar sized cities of 100,000 to 300,000 in Georgia, and you'll note the relative safety of Athens.
As mayor, I would assume that you heard the heart of the people. What has the response from the community been, and where are we a year later?
Largely it was just sadness and mournfulness in the terms we discussed earlier. That here you had a beautiful young person with a wonderful life ahead of her, and that life was needlessly cut short. For the most part, Athens residents are not interested in the politicization of these questions. They're interested in the humanity of these questions and the opportunity to heal and be present with each other.
And so I know, and I fully agree with you when you say, the people who really live here day to day, they're not interested in the national headlines and this being politicized. But I want to know, what is your direct response to the Laken Riley Act officially being law?
I've been in public policy making for a long time, for almost 20 years. And I've come to recognize that in public policy, sometimes you have this cocktail of some authentic desire And then you have some bluster that gets woven in at the same time. And I would say that the Laken Riley Act is that kind of legislation, because you certainly have the authentic desire for safety, but then you have the text of the bill which upends due process that we've come to enjoy as a constitutional democracy in the United States, where somebody has consequences when they're found guilty in a court of law, not when they're accused, which is what the text of this act says.
Where are things now from you sitting as mayor in this city a year later?
Right now, we are confident in the quality of our public safety leadership. Right now, we are a loving community. We look to the years ahead to become an even safer and an even stronger community for everybody who has grown up here, for everybody who lives here now, and for everybody who will come here. And we know that that takes working multiple layers at the same time, but we're up for that challenge. We've always been a welcoming community here in Athens. We've always been a crossroads of people coming from all over the globe to come to study, to come to make art, to come to be neighbors, to come to be with one's family members, and that's always going to continue to be the case.
If someone were to say Athens is a sanctuary city, what would you say to that?
For more than 15 years, by state law, localities in Georgia, cities or counties, can't be sanctuary cities, and I have to attest to that every year, and the sheriff has to attest to that every year, and we've done that. So when you look at the formal actions that we take, we are not places that you would ascribe to other cities under the sanctuary city umbrella, which of course has no formal legal definition. But every December, I sign a statement noting what we do and noting what state law requires around sanctuary cities, and we continue to follow that protocol.
How have the recent executive orders from Washington, D.C. impacted your city?
Mostly, these recent executive orders have created confusion because, of course, in the case of the loan and grant funding freeze, there was very quick court action, and even from the outset, there were not specifics about which programs were being paused and which were not being paused. If a contract had already been signed and funds delivered, were those funds going to remain locally, either with local government or with a nonprofit agency or others? Certainly Athens is the hub for Northeast Georgia, and so we provide a lot of services, not only for our 130,000 residents, but for the surrounding population. So that includes Meals on Wheels, and that includes obviously educational programming, and that includes a lot of other social service activities. And the day after that late night memo was issued, my phone was just blowing up with program directors and executive directors wondering, am I good? Am I not good? What do you know? And we had very little to offer, kind of based on how paper thin the initial issue was. And now we certainly hope that the court is going to be our friend when it comes to dollars that Congress has allocated going to where Congress said they had to end up. But again, it's a confusing time. It's like watching a fireworks display, and every blast leaves a burn on your cornea, and that makes you forget the last blast or the one before. So that's the moment we're in. I'm trying not to be too focused on the shock and awe aspect of it, and really think about the tangible aspect of it on our residents.